This is Rogers TV, Grey County. The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. Today we're going to not exactly talk with our usual cast, dare I use that word, of elected politicians and municipal representatives. We're going to switch it up a bit and talk about an organization that is working within Grey Bruce called electHER, or to use the full title of the organization on its webpage, electHER Now. And I want to welcome Beth Hamilton, who is a councillor in West Grey, and Sarah Pederson, who's a community volunteer, both of whom are quite active in electHER. So Sarah, Beth, welcome. Good to have you on Politically Speaking.
Great to be here, David.
Now, what is electHER Now? Let's just use the diminutive, electHER. What is electHER? Who wants to start?
I can start. Thanks so much for having us here today. So electHER is a kind of a volunteer organization that was launched in January 2021, just over a year ago. And it's just a grassroots kind of organization that's looking to help increase the number of women that are represented locally at municipal tables across Grey and Bruce. We do that in a whole bunch of different ways that I'm sure we'll get into more throughout the show, but that's kind of the quick overview is,
Well, Beth, what is the exact ratio of elected women to the overall number of elected councillors in Grey Bruce?
That's a great question, David. So almost 51% of our population in Grey Bruce are women. However, at our local tables, at all the municipal councils across Grey and Bruce, and there's 17 municipalities, we have an average of 26% women at those tables. Ontario elected their first female politician over 100 years ago. Constance Hamilton, no relation to me, David. Constance Hamilton was back in 1921 was elected to municipal office. So it's taken us 100 years to get to 26% women at the table, and we certainly don't want to wait another 100 years to reach gender parity, to reach 50%.
Which I find, I won't say odd, but I find discouraging because there is such a rich heritage, political heritage. We, in Grey Bruce, we have Nellie McClung was born in Chatsworth. Agnes MacPhail represented the area so well for so many years, and it was a distinguished and leading politician. As you say, there have been women at the municipal table. And I just want to throw in a reference to the exhibit at Grey Roots called Pearls and Politics. And I would say to anyone, it's online and gives a really good background on the elected women in municipal and in all levels of politics, but particularly focusing on municipal politicians who have been successful in Grey County, not Bruce, Grey County. And I think the same, I'm sure there are the same stories for Bruce County. Now, with that rather low proportion, what's the strategy to move forward? What is that? Why electHER Now was brought together?
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely, our goal is to reach that gender parity that, was mentioned in terms of, who is sitting at the political tables across Grey and Bruce. And so electHER is kind of aiming, we have like a three-pronged approach, so three different strategies that we're kind of focusing on to help achieve that gender parity. So the first is that we're looking to encourage women to run for office and then helping them win. So, more women can't be elected if we don't have more women running. And so elecTHER is just seeking to provide that space and support for women across the two counties to make that choice, to explore their options and kind of feel empowered to run for office. The second strategy that we're kind of implementing, and that will be occurring looking into the future, maybe a little bit more after this next election, and that's supporting women to help them thrive in their first term of office. Sometimes, a woman might be the only woman sitting around that table, or there might not be many. And so just, helping provide that support for people as they are going forward into that first term. And then the third kind of strategy is that we're looking to just provide lots of resources for everyone and to help women kind of achieve long-term political success. So our website has a ton of resources. We have lots of different events and things that we'll discuss again a bit more here. But just, providing those resources so that women can consider politics like a viable career, right? So and helping them achieve that long-term success within the political sphere.
I know a number of the women, at least in the Owen Sound area, who have run politically, and they have always, how can I say this politely? They have been mature women, that they have been women who have been successful in business. I know that two previous mayors were successful business people. Do you find that age is sometimes a barrier, or are there other issues that kind of, once they get in the way, but are sometimes roadblocks to political involvement?
That's a great question, David. And I think we could unpack that a little bit.
We can. Trust me. Let's unpack it.
I think Sarah and I will have a lot to say. Absolutely. We're talking about diversity at council, and electHER is really focused on that gender parity piece, but also, as you're speaking of, diversity of life experience at the table. I reflect on some of the barriers for women or perhaps younger people for running, and one of them would be as simple as the timing of a lot of council meetings. So we're having daytime meetings. A lot of younger women would be employed or would have other responsibilities during the day. It'd be challenging for a working woman to also be part of a council. And so a lot of women might find themselves waiting until retirement years or later in their career to enter politics. I think too, for women who women in our communities are still primarily responsible for raising children. If you look at research, women still take on more of that childcare role, or perhaps they're caring for older parents as well. And so that's taking up more time in your life when you're perhaps middle-aged, for example, and wouldn't leave that space to come to the table and enter politics as well. So certainly when I chose to run as a mid-aged woman, that was one of the reasons I wanted to run for council, was to bring a younger voice to the table at this time in my life, and the connections in the community that I have at this time in my life as well. But I'm sure, Sarah, you've got more to add about diversity, and in particular, we're talking about age.
Mm-hmm. And I like how you mentioned, your experience, Beth. I think another kind of barrier, another piece of this can often be who do younger people see represented around those tables? And because often that isn't people within their kind of own age group, it might just seem like not a space where they would belong, right? So I think that's a big part of when we're talking about representation. It's obviously to have those voices there, but also to show other people, younger people or diverse people, that they have space at these tables as well. Because it's hard to picture yourself somewhere, or harder to picture yourself somewhere where you haven't seen someone who looks like you sitting in that space, right? So I think, it's really important as we look to, have more women, more gender diverse, more, racialized folks, all just increasing diversity in general at political tables. It kind of has that two-pronged benefit of, bringing those voices, but also showing others that it's possible.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, because historically, municipal politics have been often dominated by, excuse the expression, old white guys. And I'm one. So we'll leave it at that. But the point is that doesn't compose the community. As you've well pointed out, 51% of the population is female. Let's what can we do to bring those voices to the table? And it sounds like that would be the sort of the underlying purpose of electHER. It wants to bring those voices to the table so that there are differing voices, differing points of view.
Absolutely. And I think, as Sarah mentioned, that idea of you got to see it to be it, to have those role models. And so electHER is creating forums and resources to highlight women who are in these leadership roles so that others in the community can see the diversity of women who are serving, diversity of ages and experiences. And that's encouraging when you see yourself reflected in your own council. That gives you yourself permission to dream and work towards that goal as well. I also reflect on another barrier could be at this time in our life, or my life, would be a lot of the council work is considered part-time, and the remuneration is also less than part-time. And so you have to have a certain flexibility in your life or in your job to make space for that at council, and perhaps a certain amount of privilege to be able to afford to take time away from work and family to do this really important service work. So that's another, as a community, as a systems approach, we can talk about some of those barriers and work together as a community to eliminate those barriers, such as receiving adequate funding to pursue this as a career.
A good point, Beth. I think if you added up the number of hours a politician actually works, it would, compared to what they're paid, it would work out to less than the minimum wage. Before it was just increased. Okay, it's not, and if I can stand on a little stump here and say, politicians work hard. They are not grifters, as many people like to think they are. They are, I believe, the guests I've had on this show are uniformly good people who want to do the best for their community. And I think you make a very valid point that somehow that to see it as a vocation is, well, not sometimes seen well. Not sometimes, but doesn't it also include things like providing childcare or compensating for childcare for committee meetings or council meetings? Would these be approaches that you might endorse?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, if we're looking at, thinking of women specifically, as the people who are, more significantly impacted by childcare responsibilities, which is another whole topic, but considering that's where we're at, putting things into place that would help support, to help mitigate some of those barriers, right? And childcare could be one of them. And, that's another, even just the issue of childcare and the shortage of childcare, a good example of why it's important to have diverse experiences sitting around decision-making tables, right? Because when we have people with different lived experiences and different perspectives, then their voices are heard and considered, and those positions are examined as part of those decision-making processes. And without those perspectives, sometimes those experiences can be lost and not kind of taken into account the ways maybe the experiences that are represented around the table might be.
Let me ask you, just cycle back a little bit, because I wanted to ask I missed a question I wanted to ask is, why the municipal forum? Is there a reason for focusing? I mean, we have three levels of politics, of government here in Canada. We've got the federal government, we've got the, and the House of Commons, we've got the Queen's Park, the legislative assembly here in Ontario. But there's also that third tier or lowest tier, so it's sometimes referred to as the municipal tier. Why focus on the municipal tier?
I'll take a stab at that first, Sarah. It's a great question. First of all, there's such wonderful opportunity. You're talking about many positions being available to the community. And we've got 17 municipalities across Grey Bruce. So we're impacting a lot of decision makers when we talk about municipal politics. A lot of people would say municipal government is the closest to the people, meaning when you wake up and you go about your day, you are interacting with so many services that your municipal government provides, whether that's your street being plowed, your sidewalks, your street lights, going to the library, your parks, your recreation centers, or planning or zoning, many emergency services. So many of our services that we rely on day to day are delivered by your local government. They're this workhorse, our local government, multifaceted. And I think too, your councillors, your members of council are so close to the community. You can just pick up the phone and talk to any member of council, send them an email. You're bumping into them in the grocery store. Excuse me. And so in that way too, that relationship piece it's closer, I think, with your community than say MPP and MP level of politics. So for those reasons, we have an opportunity to make a great impact when we talk about gender parity at our local level. But I'm going to toss it back to Sarah for her people.
Yeah, I think those are all really, really great and important points, Beth. And I think, yeah, in terms of like how electHER started, you know, it was folks in our community, right, who were looking around and seeing the local need and thinking, what can we do to help change the landscape, right, to help change that political landscape locally? And so as a really, you know, grassroots and community-based organization, I think that it was just such a good fit for electHER and for the group of volunteers. I know for myself, you know, becoming involved with electHER, you know, there's a lot of local issues that really mattered a lot to me. And I've, you know, been interested in municipal politics. And so, yeah, just like Beth mentioned, it feels closer to home. And so obviously all levels of government are really important and have a lot of impact. But in terms of what we could do at the community level, that municipal angle seemed like the best fit. And yeah, there's electHER.
And I might build on that, Sarah. I just might add that electHER, those who are behind electHER, it is a blending of community members and politicians working together to move these supports forward for everyone. And so we have a planning team of community volunteers, such as Sarah, who have experience and are eager to support this mission. And then we also have an advisory council of elected politicians, female politicians, representing all the different municipalities across Grey and Bruce. So that collective of working together. And it really mirrors, I just think about this now, how it mirrors our local governments, and that at local government, we have elected officials at the council table, but we also have committees and boards where community can serve and work really closely together with your elected officials. So that there again, there's another example of the community so closely interfacing with their local government.
Yeah, I wondered, Beth, I just want to spin it back to something you said, that municipal politics is the closest to the people, and you never know where you're going to encounter people. Have you had the experience of going grocery shopping and someone buttonholing you and say, I want my potholes fixed, or something like that?
Absolutely. You know, it's funny. So this is my first term as a councillor, so I'm learning as I go, and I thought my phone would be ringing every single day with concerns, but I find I think some people find it a bit intimidating to pick up the phone and talk to their councillor, and I have more of those organic conversations, such as going to buy some bread at the local grocery store, and you bump into someone and you have that conversation. And as I reflected on boundaries, as I was starting to be a politician, I wondered about these moments that I thought maybe I just want to have my personal time, and let's make a date, and let's officially meet in the office to discuss your concern. But I quickly realized that those moments, those really organic moments, are really important to capture in that moment and to make that connection. And so I actually look forward to bumping into constituents and hearing what's on their minds. But I've had to build in a lot more time. So there's no just going to the grocery store for 5 minutes. That never, ever happens. You must build in at least half an hour, because you never know who you might bump into and what you're going to talk about.
And dare I say, you receive both the good and the bad?
Yeah, that's a good point. Absolutely, you receive the good and the bad. I think generally speaking, people are reaching out with concerns, right? And I think that's just human nature. If things are going well, you're often not connecting to others and saying, things are going well, good job. So often when I'm hearing from constituents, it's a concern, or it might even be ideas too. Have you thought about this? Or this municipality is doing it this way. Have you considered? And lots of idea sharing, which I really appreciate and enjoy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Sarah, you have yet to, because you're not elected municipal councillor yet, you have yet to experience that great joy of having someone buttonhole you in the produce section.
That is true. I don't generally have those experiences. My face is not quite so recognized as elected officials. So yeah, that hasn't been my experience, but maybe someday.
Sure. Actually, Beth, that comes back to another issue that is, I think, people in general may not realize, is the recognition factor. And especially in over the last 2 years, where municipal councils have been on TV, either local cable systems such as Rogers, or municipalities have installed video casting for their municipal council meetings on Zoom or whatever platform is their choice. Have you noticed an increase in recognition? I know you. I saw you on TV.
That's a good question. I don't think I have experienced that, David, but what I will say is through COVID, we learned to do things very differently, right? So my first year as a councillor was in person in council chambers. And then I spent 2 years on Zoom with my council. And actually just yesterday, we had our first in-person council meeting in 2 years. So I've spent more time on Zoom with my council than I have in person. And yesterday I noticed how great it felt to be together, how much more I can pick up on body language and listen even more actively. And so I recognize just how much I was missing the nuance of the conversation by going online. But certainly it's provided a great opportunity. What I really enjoy about having our meetings on Zoom. And so while our council met in person, our community continued to Zoom into the meeting. And what I like about that hybrid model is I think we have more people watching and tuning in and participating than we did pre-COVID. So now you can be doing your dishes and multitasking and watching council live on YouTube or that kind of thing. So that's pretty exciting and something I'm hoping that we can move forward. But back to your point about being recognized, I don't think I truly understood how public life was until it happened, right? And so everything you say at council is recorded onto YouTube forever. I have a very public social media page, so learning how to manage that and managing comments, for example. And to your point, being recognized out in the community, and even if you're not, maybe you're not having such a great day, but you got to set that aside and be present for that constituent who's approached you and wants to talk with you. So definitely learning how to navigate public life and just how public that is was a skill that I had to hone along the way.
Is that one of the skills, one of the things that you hope will happen when you referred to mentoring?
Oh, great question, David. Absolutely. And, I will be the first to say, like 10 years ago, I never considered running for politics. I don't consider myself your typical politician in that I'm not a very extroverted person. I don't love the spotlight. I don't follow politics all that closely. I mean, obviously, I follow my own local government and those around me, but I'm very much about community and community building and social justice. And so I approached council in that way. And I've lost the thread of where we started here, but just that, about skills. So, I think what's so great about having a diverse set of people at the table is we do bring different skills. So I know I bring skills of active listening and building common ground, for example. But I also know that there were some skills that I needed to hone more, including public speaking and public life. And so having mentors who are further down the path than you, who can shed a light down the path and give you tips along the way, lessons that they've learned along the way, it's really significant. And to go to when you have something that you're working through, definitely those supports are very important when you're first starting out in politics. And electHER, as one of our strategies, is building those networks of supports for women at the political table. It's through a lot of our online resources, but also, we've had our first in-person event. So electHER came through the time of COVID. And so much of what we've done has been online, and I'm very much looking forward to more in-person events where we can connect, and we'll be seeing more of that.
Well, I did want to get into that. We'll do that after the break. We've got a few minutes yet, but don't worry. We'll come back to that particular stuff. But let me ask you if I can ask you a personal question, Beth. What caused you to get involved in politics?
Absolutely.
Surely there's a story there.
Well, right. Especially after I said, 10 years ago, I never thought I'd be at the table. So I'm trained as a music therapist. I've worked in palliative care and long-term care. I'm a music educator. That's my background. I think what sparked my interest in politics was when it became very personal. So there was a time about 6 years ago where my community was advocating for some changes that were happening in a local forest, actually. So our neighborhood, it was a time of coming together, of writing letters to council. It actually involved our Grey County Council. And so I was learning about two-tier government and how we have our local lower tier and our upper tier Grey County, and who sits on that Grey County Council, our mayors and deputy mayors. And rallying with the neighbors to educate ourselves about how that political system worked, how those decisions were made about this forest that was important to our community. And so I found myself doing a lot of learning. I was personally motivated, writing letters, supporting a delegation, supporting at a committee, learning that, committees don't make the final decision. I must also now go and support at the council level as council makes that final decision, learning about staff reports and how those work. And so through I think that organizing and advocating, a spark lit for me. And so what brought me to run for council was I wasn't hearing that council at the time talk about climate change. And I wanted to bring a younger voice and a different perspective to council. And so it was the right time in my life. I had the space and the flexibility in my job. I had the support of my friends and my family. And I felt a sense of responsibility for climate change, quite honestly, to run for municipal council. So that's what sparked this journey.
So you ran and you won.
I ran and I won. Yeah. And I had a wonderful team. It was again, I learned so much through the experience, David. I tell you that the day we had to go out door knocking, I found myself just rolling around on the floor thinking, why did I decide to do this? This is so scary, having to go knock on strangers' doors. Whose idea was this? But
And as an
again,
introvert, I can understand that this isn't me.
yeah, absolutely. And so I had the support of my husband, who's from Manitoba and can talk to anybody. And together we went out and started knocking on doors. And after our first night of knocking on doors, I said to him, I got this. I got this. This actually, it was actually kind of fun. And you know, they're very, I was able to use my active listening skills a lot of the time. You know, what do you enjoy about your community? Tell me about this neck of the woods. You know, what are some of your concerns? And so all those therapy skills and life skills that I had, I was able to use at the door.
Well, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back because I want to hear more about what electHER has done and is doing, because there's some exciting stuff happening that I've heard about. Friends, I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking, and we'll be right back.
This program is brought to you by NHL Center Ice. Follow the teams and players you want to watch no matter where they play. NHL Center Ice is part of the Rogers Super Sports Pack.
I'm a singer-songwriter from Six Nations, and I've been writing songs about my experience, and with that being said, it's helped me hold hope in my heart in following my dreams and being resilient to everyday Indigenous battles. Competition between spirit, earth, and wind, let me tell you now. This song in particular, The Shiner, is a special song that I wrote for my grandfather. He was a snow snake maker, and that is a Haudenosaunee winter sport. It's my job to educate and to share, and the music allows me to do that. He'll be shining snow snakes and mudcats to the end of his days.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome back to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guests are Sarah Pederson and Beth Hamilton, and we're talking about an organization here in Grey Bruce called electHER. And we've been having an interesting chat about electHER, women in politics, and some of the challenges, and of course, some of the joys that can happen. Now, Beth, we heard your story about how you got involved in politics, and some of the surprises that it sounds like you have learned about yourself and about politics. But Sarah, while you have not been elected to office, you've had some political experience too, have you not?
Yeah, so I've never ran or been elected for political office myself. I've long been interested in politics, I would say for many years, but often I think, kind of historically had focused a lot on like the provincial and federal level. I've worked in social services for the entirety of my career, and very interested in like social justice. And so that had previously been my focus. And then that kind of shifted for me. Not that, again, that those aren't important, but so I previously lived in the town of Paisley, and we had our local school, come under an accommodation review. And so throughout that process, I and many others became very involved in kind of that local level with the school board and with the municipality. I ended up eventually joining a committee of Erin Eldersley at the time. And so I got really involved with and kind of got a close-up view rather of how important those municipal level decisions, and that includes school boards, but and it was the school board and the municipality really working together, how important that was for our local community. And I also got to feel how important that collective community organization was. And so similar to Beth, in terms of her path to municipal politics, my interest in municipal politics kind of came as a result of the things that were happening in my own community, the gaps that I saw around our local table. And so for a lot of the reasons we discussed previously, running for office wasn't an option for me. I had young children at home. As a single parent, running for office wasn't something that a decision I felt I could make at the time, but I really wanted to be involved and support seeing more diverse representation at the political table locally. So one of the things that I was able to do was help support another woman to run. And so that involved, a whole bunch of different things and helping with her, website setup and setting up print resources and, spreading the word and helping, support her in her journey to run for office. And she ran and was successful as well. So it was a really important experience for me, I think. And I just, have been able to see how the value of that local representation. I also think that our experiences aren't unique. I think often women, might look at themselves and be like, well, I don't have any political experience. And yet often those same women are the ones who are showing up at every part, at the school level. They're sitting on the council, the school and community councils. We're the ones sitting at the chamber meetings. We're the ones, organizing those local events and advocating for local causes and fundraising. And so, even though that might not be considered political, that is political, right? It is political when you're engaging actively in your community. And so I think a lot of women have a lot more skills and resources to kind of fall back on to help support them in municipal politics than they might think.
Beth, I want to come back to actually touch on something you said before, but also pick up on what Sarah said. She was involved in supporting a candidate. Mm-hmm. And as a candidate, you mentioned your husband, of course, as a great support. And, I'm sure that's probably one of the key supports you have. But what about your team? Did you have people from the community, your friends, neighbors, perhaps, who helped you run? Because running for political office is no slam dunk.
That's a great question. And certainly as we're talking about supporting more women to run, we can all think about how we can be part of that change. And so for some, it will be, yes, I'm going to run. I'm going to be here. I'm going to run for office. But if that's not where we are as individuals, we can support women in running and be part of their teams. And so for my team was, I'd say, a more informal team. It was my first time running. And I didn't have anyone in my network that was close to me who had run before. And so I planned for about a year. I was reading books, following blogs, attending council meetings for about a year as well, doing all this preparation. And as friends offered to help, they were very hands-on in helping me, knocking on doors, putting out signs, that kind of thing. I live in a very big community, so we had a lot of doors to knock on. And especially out in the rural areas, it's really important to have a buddy with you. And so I think a lot of people feel nervous knocking the doors. I first did, but you can be a support by being there, just being present with the person you're supporting. Maybe you're holding the literature. There's a role for everyone. Maybe you're really good at social media and you want to start crafting some of those messages for her. Maybe you're good at taking photos or writing a news release for your friend, or maybe you're really good at organizing an event and want to organize a fundraiser. There's so many ways we can champion and support women, and it could just be a couple of hours of time, or it could be for that whole season. So May 2nd is when the municipal nomination period opens is May 2nd, and it closes on August 19th at 2 p.m. And the election will be on Monday, October 24th of this year for our municipal councils. And so we have the season of time coming up where each one of us can be of support to women as they run for office.
Yes, I think it's very, very important to remember that behind every candidate, there is usually a good organization, formal or informal. And having talked to candidates, they, okay, you can wear out the shoes, but you got to have someone to point you in the right direction. I talked to one candidate who said, actually, she said to her campaign manager, just tell me where to go. Just tell me where to go. and because she had a role. The people who supported that candidate had a role, and everyone really played well in the sandbox together. So it's really important to remember that you can do the gift of time is probably the biggest gift, as opposed to financial gifts, which are an option too. You can support a candidate by making a cash donation, subject to certain limits, and there are spending limits and donation limits that we'll all learn about probably over the summer. But the point is more that the biggest gift is probably time. So if people want to do that, okay, let's. How can I help? I believe in what you're doing. How can I help you?
Yes, time, and I was just reflecting on networks too. So as I get I call it a real organic approach for myself, because I was learning as I went, and it just kind of took on a life of its own in a really organic way. So we can give time to those we're supporting. We can also introduce them to our networks. And so you're expanding the networks and the sphere of impact for that candidate who's running. And just to also mention that as candidates, you'll right size your campaign for you. So I wouldn't want our viewers to feel like they have to have a well orchestrated, highly skilled team to be effective. You might have that path. You also might just be a one person, powerhouse out there too. We each find our own strategy and way of moving through that municipal election season, but certainly having support and that comes in different forms, whether they're phone calls or hours of dedicated time to your team, whether it's someone just to listen to you and your concerns. That support's really important.
Yeah. Or to provide the cold water when you're out door knocking. That's important too. I want to also ask you what electHER is doing to. Well, it's an organization. You've done something kind of interesting. You've sponsored what's called a campaign school. What's that about?
Yes, and Sarah, did you want to start or?
No, I'm going to let you take this one mostly because I know you've been more involved in helping plan the campaign school and stuff, but I just wanted to comment too, as I was listening to you talk, Beth, and talking about those networks and all of those things. It's, electHER is a great, with the things that we're doing that we're going to be talking about here, a great resource, right, to help provide some of that networking, to provide some of those resources, and to provide some of that encouragement. So even just, if as a friend of someone or an acquaintance of someone who's thinking about running and you don't maybe have the finances or the time, even just being a support, right? And being able to say like, hey, you'd be great in this role, or have you ever considered running? I think that those pieces of encouragement are important too. But in terms of the specifics, I'll let you take this one, Beth, because
sure,
you're more knowledgeable on it than I am.
So we have a campaign school. It started last night, but it's not too late to join. So please do go to the website for more information. And I'm going to share some information too. But our website is electhernow.ca. It's not too late to sign up for this campaign school. So the campaign school is running for the month of April on Tuesday evenings online. And it's open to everyone, and it's free, but you do have to register. And so there's going to be 4 weeks of campaign school where we have a theme for the evening, and there's a video that everyone who's participating watches that's been prepared ahead of time. And then there's this wonderful session that involves panelists, where we ask those panelists questions about that theme. So for example, coming up next week, so this would be Tuesday, April 12th at 7 p.m. online, the theme is building your team, your plan, and your finances. We have our panelists are politicians from across Grey and Bruce, but also resources from outside of our area as well. So for example, next Tuesday, we have Deputy Mayor Shirley Keaveney of Neeford. We have Councillor, Councillor Megan Robertson. And then we also have Debbie Wilcox joining us as well. And so what we could expect at that class next Tuesday online is how to build your team, like we were just talking about, right? How to create a plan. The campaign period opens May 2nd, and we're going all the way to October 24th. That's a long time. So how to strategize and make your plan. And then also we'll talk about managing your finances. And of course, you don't want to be raising any funds or spending any funds until you're registered as a candidate with the clerk at your office. So each week we have a different class. Our third class is called The Nuts and Bolts of Campaigning, where we will be talking about creating your story. Why are you running? Talking about marketing material, campaign marketing material, print material, signs, how to answer tough questions, right? At the door or out at the grocery store, perhaps, preparing for community events and all candidate meetings. In our last class on April 26th, I'll be one of the panelists at that. So I'm really looking forward to that opportunity. And that will be wrapping up, get out the vote and ask her anything. So we'll have detailed voting information and just encourage how we can go about encouraging people to vote, get that vote out, and ask her anything. What have I signed up for? When am I going to be asked?
Probably beyond your wildest imagination, trust me.
And I should mention, David, that some of those videos will be posted to the electHER.now.ca website at the beginning of May. So look for lots of resources to support the election journey. But there's resources there now, and there'll be more added as we go.
I think it's also fair to say that while the registration for candidacy opens, or there is work to be done, because you've as people who are regular viewers will know, you got to have 25 signatures of electors to throw your hat in the ring, and you have a deposit. Yes. But there's this other thing called a provincial election going on. So distracting. So if anybody is panicking, say, "Oh my gosh, I've got to do," no, you don't have to do anything. Don't sweat it.
Yes.
Just take a deep breath and consider this carefully, because it's a big, I think it's fair to say running for elected office is a very big step.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point, David. That's a really good point. Don't feel like you have to.
Don't panic.
Don't panic. Yeah. And you have until August 19th to declare, right? You have until that long. And a really good point about the provincial election. It's the same circumstance when I ran 4 years ago. We had the provincial election in June. As someone who was newer to the community at the time, I did decide strategically to declare that very first day. Just to start getting name recognition, starting to build those connections. But you certainly don't have to. And you likely won't be out knocking on doors until after the provincial election as well. So really good points.
Oh, and don't forget the sign bylaw.
Right. Yes. Erin, did you run into sign bylaws, or as part of your supporting the candidate that you had, what was your approach to signs?
So it was a pretty small community.
Yes.
So yeah, we I don't recall any running into any issues around signage, but I do remember being out there and putting them up.
I know a strategy we had with my team was I had 200 signs, and my community, West Grey, is it's a big community. And so our strategy was we would only put signs on private properties of people who supported me running. And so it became a challenge, right? Of all the doors that we were knocking, to have the courage to say, would you like a sign, and to have those supports. So that was kind of a fun challenge, I thought.
Oh yes, and sometimes those municipal bylaw officers will be very strict about politicians' signs. So know the sign bylaw. The other thing I wanted to just touch on very briefly are the financial regulations, because lest people think that this is, you can just throw money at this. No, you can't. There are spending limits, and these are enforced. There was a case in Toronto of someone who spent an enormous amount of money and overspent their limits, and they actually were removed from office because of now that was down in Toronto. That is not here, but the point is, you've just got to remember, and these are all things you will be learning at the campaign school, I'm trusting.
That's right, David. That's such a good point. So don't be raising money or spending money until you become a registered candidate, and the clerk knows everything, and the clerk will let you know. You have a question, you ask your clerk. They will inform you of how much you can spend. But you're right, at our campaign school, so next Tuesday on the 12th, that is dedicated to building your team, your plan, and your finances. So there's great information there. There'll be more links to more detailed resources as well.
So it's a place to get all those million questions answered.
That's right. That's right. And if I might just mention, David, so the campaign school is running for the month of April online every Tuesday night. And then beginning in May, we are going to be offering supports for anyone who's considering running or is running, called Election Connection. And so on the website, starting in May, there will be a place where if you have a question or a concern or want to connect with someone to talk about something about your campaign, you can, through our website, tell us your question. And our community volunteers will send you resources and or be able to connect you to a real life person in our Grey Bruce community who has experience and can share their experience with you about your question. Election Connection. So again, we're building those supports, we're networking. We want people to feel, have access to all the rich experience we have in our community.
And I should also want to reiterate that my understanding is that the campaign school is gender open. Anyone who wishes to run is welcome at the campaign school.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone is welcome to sign up for the campaign school. And so even if you're not someone who's planning to run or considering running, but you want to learn a little bit more how you can support someone who is running, we encourage any and all who are interested to sign up online for that campaign school. And also to check out, we have a lot of resources that are already posted. There's going to be many more coming, but I know what you guys were talking about. The finances and all of those things, there's some resources posted on the website as well that helps outline some of those specifics around campaign rules and such.
It sounds like you've really done the research.
Yeah, I would say it's been like amazing to work with just an incredibly knowledgeable, connected, group of women through this process. I know that I've heard different, politicians who are involved speak about how supportive it's been for them to be able to connect with other women in similar circumstances as a community volunteer. It's been an absolute privilege to be able to sit around this table with, all of these women who are, all kind of we all come from different backgrounds. As you know, municipal politics is nonpartisan, but we all have our different, political views and all of those things, but coming together and helping create all of these different resources and make available these events and connections for people. I think it just really speaks to the diversity that we have even within our group of women, right? So there's, everyone has lots of different strengths, and it's very evident in the supports we've been able to pull together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Has that been your experience as well, Beth, that as a relatively new politician, you're discovering new resources that you didn't knew exist?
Every time I speak with someone, I learn something new from their experience. Absolutely. And I think I'm recognizing now that we're 2 years, after COVID, I'm recognizing what an impact that I think has had on my supports and networking as a first-term councillor. And so COVID created isolation in many different ways. But through electHER and through all the work we've done on electHER has been through Zoom because it's happened through the pandemic, but through coming together as women on Zoom, all with this mission of reaching gender parity. Our ambitious goal is to have gender parity by 2030 here in Grey Bruce, bringing together community volunteers and politicians and working together. It's through this work that I, in turn, am also feeling more supported. And I'm learning, I'm learning so much from these strong leaders that I'm surrounded by. So it was a nice surprise to me that by doing this work of supporting more women, I, in turn, am also feeling more supported. That was a beautiful surprise.
Yeah. And Sarah, have you found the same kind of support and encouragement as you move forward with electHER?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I'm thinking about, for example, running for politics in the future wouldn't be off the table for me. It's something I'm definitely very interested in. And I have found that, being able to connect with the women who are doing the work at electHER. And so, yeah, it's been a great networking opportunity for my life right now, but also to, kind of make these connections that I know that, if in the future I'm running and I have a question or I want to reach out, I know that each and every one of these women that I've been able to connect with would absolutely provide support and be happy to, answer my questions or kind of provide me with guidance. And I think that's the beauty of those kind of like community-based models, right? Where we come together, it's that mutual aid, that mutual support. And that's really kind of what electHER is all about, is providing that support for women. It's not, the resource, and support is a lot of things, right? So resources, again, that like social support, this believing you can do it because you see people doing it, all of those pieces. So yeah, I would say that I'm walking away. Well, I'm not walking away because I'm still here, but I mean, like looking to my future. I think that, yeah, this experience has been completely invaluable.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to thank the both of you for being a part of Politically Speaking. It's provided a very useful and I think very helpful conversation about electHER Now, which, by the way, www.electhernow.ca is the website. And I want to thank you, Beth, and thank you, Sarah, for telling us about electHER Now. And best wishes to the both of you for great success with electHER Now. And hey, a year from now, who knows? Thank you both. And thank you, friends, for being a part of Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. We'll talk again.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.